Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, one of our hosts will start us out. They'll tell us their hot topic and tell us if it's a truth, lie, or shenanigans. Give a little background, and then we'll talk about it until time is up. Then we'll go to our live audience questions and comments about that topic. So make sure you are online talking to us. All right, we've got a good hot topic, really good hot topic today from Gianni Storm.
Woo!
Gianni, is this a
Starting off
truth?
soon.
Is this a truth, lie, or shenanigan?
Well, Neo, this is an unfortunate truth. There was an execution that took place December 10th. The convicted was Brandon Bernard, who was executed in federal prison for, well, he was charged in connection with the slayings of Todd and Stacy Bagley, who were two youth ministers that were carjacked, abducted, and unfortunately shot to death in 1999 at the Fort Hood Military Reservation in Central Texas. So, a group of gang members, this is a little bit backstory of the situation, but a group of gang members got a ride from Todd Bagley, then pointed a gun at his head and forced him and Stacy into the trunk of their car. After hours of driving to rob the couple, the ringleader, his name was Christopher Vialva, shot the couple, killing Todd and knocking Stacy unconscious. Then Bernard, who was just executed, lit the car on fire. Now, decades later, the gunman Christopher Vialva was executed actually this year as well in September, while the other co-defendants, they were given lesser sentence. Bernard was the youngest person in the United States to receive a death sentence in nearly 70 years for a crime committed when he was actually a teenager. So yeah, this case has actually received a lot of public and media attention and support. Some of you may have remembered this story from Kim Kardashian. If you follow celebrity and trends, things like that, she actually supported Bernard um, in the hopes of his freedom. So petitioned on his behalf, as well as really well-known politicians and co-defenders and yeah, ex-prosecutors. So Brandon Bernard actually, his last words to the Bagley family were, "I'm sorry, I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. That's the only words that I can say that completely capture how I feel now and how I felt that day." So soon after that, the victim's family thanked Trump and the federal government for carrying out the sentence in their statement. Um, so I know that was a lot to unpack, but
No,
basically, during the long-awaited during the long-awaited presidency, the feds have carried out 9 executions since this July, after going 17 years without any federal execution.
17
So
years.
my question to the panel is, how do you feel about federal executions or capital punishment today? And then how do you, what do you make of maybe why all of these executions now? Like why now during this Trump administration, in this short period of time after not having so many in 17 years?
All right.
Yeah.
Let's start out with Robbie Rock on this one. Robbie Rock.
Interesting topic because capital punishment in Canada is a thing of the past. The last execution in Canada was a double hanging in December of 1962. And then the death penalty was de facto abolished in January of 1963 and de jure in September of 1999. That being said, I think that there are certain instances where capital punishment is the prescribed punishment. If there is, if it's absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt, my personal feelings, if you are harming children, then that's just completely inexcusable in our society. But providing that certain guidelines or certain standards have been met, I think that it's warranted because I don't feel that I should be paying as a taxpayer for somebody's well-being and upkeep if there is no hope of rehabilitation, if this is just a broken individual
So if I'm clear,
who's
I
dead.
just want to make sure I'm clear I'm understanding you correctly. You are for the death penalty?
In certain instances.
Third sense. Okay.
In certain instances, and in other times, depending on what the crime actually was, incarceration with the hopes of rehabilitation for sure, but don't seem to have a pretty good track record with making people better in jail. You have a
Okay.
pretty good track record of making harder criminals.
All right. Let's move on to Lizzie Enders. Lizzie, what do you think about this?
So I kind of agree with Rob. In theory, I am 100% in favor of the death penalty. I believe
100%.
100. I said in theory. Let me finish.
Okay.
In theory, I am 100% in favor of the death penalty. I feel in a perfect world, one, there would be no murder. But if we had a perfect justice system, we would be able to apply the death penalty appropriately so that there isn't a racist undertone in who is being executed, or there isn't a mentally ill undertone in who is being executed. So if we had a perfect system, I would be all for it. As someone who has been a victim of abuse, as someone who has had friends who have been victims of murder, I do not feel sorry for those who have done the crime to be executed. Gianni talked about Brandon Bernard, who was executed on Thursday for crimes that he committed as an 18-year-old in 1999, resulting in the death of two people. The very next day, truck driver Alfred Bourgeois was executed for the 2002 rape, torture, and murder of his 2-year-old daughter. So again, there are instances where I believe it is appropriate. On the other hand, I don't think that we have a government, we have a justice system that is able to apply it appropriately and fairly. And so that is why I think that there should be a moratorium on all executions in this country until we clean up our justice system. Like, we can't say on one hand defund the
I could
police
buy that.
and act like everything is, square with the police departments and the testimony that they give in certain cases and the way judges apply these sentences.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I really don't feel bad for Brandon Bernard. I don't feel bad for Alfred Bourgeois. In fact, the family of Alfred Bourgeois' daughter, who again was 2 years old when she was murdered, they were thankful that he was finally executed. They thought that it should not have taken this long. And I got to tell you, and I'm not talking about my mother here because, my mother obviously didn't kill me, but as someone else, in my family who abused me when I was younger, if I had the opportunity to give a victim impact statement, if he were on trial today and I had the opportunity to give a victim impact statement, you best believe I would be calling for his execution. And I would want it to be public and on television. I think a lot of times we get too caught up in, oh, it's too barbaric, as something Mike Winter just put in his comment, but we forget about how barbaric the initial crime was. And again, I'm talking about in a perfect situation where we can prove 100% that this particular criminal suspect committed the crime.
But is that possible to prove 100%?
In my case, it was. I don't know about anybody else's case, but in my case, it was. In some cases, it is possible to prove 100% when you have DNA evidence, when you have video evidence, when you have witness testimony. But again, I don't trust the justice system.
Right.
So I do believe we should have a stay on all executions, but I'm not a bleeding heart for these criminals at all.
Yeah.
And I do think it is a testimony to Trump being a hypocrite, to Trump playing up to his fan base, in that he is all of a sudden trying to execute all of these black men, because I think all of the
4 out of 5. 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5 that are up for execution before he leaves office in January are black.
Yes.
So then it begs a question, because he's been boasting for the past couple of months, I've done more for black people than anybody else since Lincoln. Well, you probably now have killed more black people under the federal justice system than anybody since.
I'm gonna.
So
I don't know about that one. I'm sure we can go
as a
back to.
as a president, as a
I'm,
president.
I mean, I don't know if you saw my background last show, but they did presidents did order hangings back in the day, so I don't know,
Well, those
but
particular,
I
okay,
get what you're saying.
I'll take it back. Those particular presidents weren't standing in front of the public, the American public, trying to feed us that they've been the savior for
That's true.
Black Americans in this country.
Oh well,
So
Lincoln
yeah,
did kill a lot of Native Americans, but we won't go into that right now. But
yeah, we talk about Black folks. We
I
talk
know
about
I'm
Black
just
folks.
saying, I'm just saying, people of color. There are some presidents out there that were Lincoln
Red
himself, who was anyway, but we're gonna. All right, so I'm curious. Does anyone feel like this is just payback right now because of his loss? I mean, because he waited until like the very. I mean, why are we all of a sudden executing at the last minute? It feels like payback to me. But so
I feel
everyone
like he's
knows.
trying to leave behind like some type of like reputation or
Hmm.
some type of
For
like
his
legacy,
base,
if you will.
absolutely.
Yeah,
For his base, I
exactly.
totally believe that. But as everyone knows, I'm a stickler for protecting children. So, um, and the one offense that I believe that we should absolutely bring back is corporal punishment, meaning like 50 lashes or whatever. Um, and that's for abuse of children. I
Oh my
believe abuse
God.
of children deserves, some type of punishment
Really?
beyond just sitting in a cell getting food and I mean, of course, prison is much worse than that, but still, the point is,
50 lives, firing squad. How about that?
I'll take that too. I'll take for abuse of children, I'll take all of that. But I'm not necessarily an advocate of the death penalty to answer your question, Gianni. Um, because and this has to do with what Lizzie was saying. I think Lizzie put it better than I would have, but it's that I don't trust the justice system. Because I think we get it. One, we get it wrong often, right? Two, it's inordinately uh, people of color. Um, it's a significant number, like Lizzie said. 4 out of the 5 are people of color. It's not 4 out of 5 people of color who are committing these types of crimes. So there's definitely something wrong with the justice system. Um, and Alfred with Bourgeois, I think his name is. I am like Lizzie. I am not shedding a tear at all for him killing his daughter, torturing his daughter, this child. Anyone who deals with children, I am not shedding a tear. I mean, now given Brandon Bernard, his situation is slightly different. He was basically a child when it happened. So some people make mistakes and deserve punishment. I don't know necessarily that death is always the solution because you can recover from 50 lashes, but you can't recover from death. I mean, once that's done, that's done. I mean, so if
Do you
you've
feel
made a
like child
mistake,
molesters deserve like torture basically, or like
yeah,
specifically
I
like
do. I'm just saying that's me personally though.
yeah.
I
But
don't.
also too, I want to say, because again, I'm an advocate for children. I was an abused child, but at the same time, I don't think it should just be a standard for children.
I
There are a
agree.
lot of women
There are
that
other
are
crimes.
abused out here.
Yeah.
There are men. Well, there are lots of men that are in prison or that should be in prison
Hmm.
who have done awful things
Yes.
to either their spouses or women that they don't even know.
Yes.
Like, we are living in society where there is evil out there.
There is.
And I think a lot of times, as liberals, we want to kind of pretend that it doesn't exist, or that there are some mitigating circumstances that we can excuse because of certain evil. But I challenge everyone, at least this week, to watch Discovery ID, Investigative Discovery, on cable for like 2 hours. And look at some of the shows about, these are all killer shows,
Hmm.
all about people who are killing their spouses, killing neighbors,
A
raping them.
lot of
It's
horrible,
crazy.
nasty people. Yeah,
There's a lot of evil out here. And
there is.
I and if again, if we had a system that we trusted, that we knew we had faith in, that we knew where the police were
Yeah.
trustworthy, then maybe this would work.
Yeah, I
that
think you put it
given
best in that in by saying, by not trusting the justice system. I think that's where my feelings on corporal punishment lies. That's why I'm not necessarily for it, but I'm not against it because I'm against the way we do corporal punishment in the United States.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
against the
let me
means
just
that
say
we
this.
use, but I am not against certain people deserving to die because of their
Well,
crimes.
and let me just say this because I think this is a sentiment of a lot of people who are anti-death penalty or who have worked in the capacity of death penalty cases, death penalty appeals. They talk about their longevity in working in that field. Again, I bring it back to the victim. You may have had 3, 4, 5 years working on appeals. I've had 46 years of dealing with being a victim.
Yeah.
So it doesn't compare. And I'm not just talking about myself, I'm talking about other victims.
Yes.
So, yes, in my
Yeah.
mind, again, I believe in the death penalty. I just don't believe in our ability to execute it
Execute it.
fairly.
So Gianni,
Period.
as the young one on the youth, the vigor and youth on the panel, what are your thoughts?
You guys have actually kind of enlightened me more. I'm not gonna lie, because originally I feel like why am I playing God in a sense?
Mm-hmm.
Even if, I mean, I'm not taking away anything or justifying anything for children or especially like abused people in situations like that, that were victims of that. But I think now I really agree to the fact that it's not necessarily that I don't want to see those people punished or, suffering for what they did, but at the same time, I think that it's an unjust and it's unfair and it's unbalanced. And usually the people that receive that punishment aren't they aren't deserving all the time because of this unjustness in our legal system. So I
And
really like that you guys brought me through that. Thank you.
it's not just, I agree with you, Johnny, and it's not just persons of color, it's also mentally ill. We've had over the past, at least from my recollection, we've had over the past decade, 20 years, a lot of people, particularly in Texas, particularly in the South, where a lot of people that have the, mental capacity of a mustard seed. And I don't mean to say that to be funny, but low IQs, people who on a spectrum would be considered mentally retarded, being executed for crimes that they really didn't understand
That they were
that they
doing.
committed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mhm.
again, I don't think we can fairly execute it in this country. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in the root of the death penalty.
Robbie, do you have any additional thoughts?
I think that we've had some really good conversation, and it's. I think that it's important to note that we are social animals, and if when these types of scenarios play out in the natural world, if there is that kind of affront to the social order, typically that animal is either attacked by the rest of the pack and killed on the spot, or they're ostracized from the pack, which is essentially a death penalty because they need that social cooperation. If you are broken and you are breaking the social fabric that is humanity, then there's no place for you within that society.
Well, that goes to Johnny's question, pre-show. She asked us, if death penalty aside, capital punishment aside, what do we think should happen to, these people, these deviants in our society,
I answered that question.
who continuously, commit horrible,
I'll take
barbaric
some
crimes?
stoning if shit, I don't mind stoning. Bring
Okay,
that
this
back.
isn't Shirley Jackson and the lottery. We said death penalty aside. So I kind of agree with Rob B. Exile, permanent exile. Send them
I
someplace
love
where they
that.
can amongst themselves. You want to be a barbarian, then
Yeah.
you go fight to death with another
Isn't that what they did
barbarian.
in Australia? Isn't that what the English did in Australia? They made
Really?
Australia a penal colony where they
They
sent
did.
all their
Oh,
their
cool.
yeah, and so Australia is built on criminals, right?
Well,
I've
I
heard
mean, I
that
would.
actually. Hence the
I
whole
think that.
like pirate thing. No, I'm kidding.
But I mean, We could do that, but I don't see how that solves the problem. I mean, especially when we're talking, we have we can travel back and forth, and I mean, I know we take their passports, but you're just sending away a problem. I don't know.
I'm not talking about sending them to London. There are tons of isolated islands out there. They have no way to get back to the mainland.
Okay, so we'll go back to English days.
Or, I mean, we got the Space Force coming and send those MFers to,
to actually, that's not a bad idea. You know what? I wouldn't mind bringing back. Unfortunately, I can't say that because again, I don't trust the system. But I'll wait till he finishes. His time is up. But back in the day, you used to have workers. You'd send them out to work. So your penal colony would be some type of hard labor. But the problem was here, at least here in the United States, that's why it was inordinately black because they were taking the slaves and putting them to work as hard labor. So the ex-slaves and putting them to work as hard labor. So I don't know. I just don't trust our penal system to be able to execute some of these things. So all right, let's get to some of these comments online. It's a lot going on online. Vaughn Perry says they're legit trying to bring back Firing Squad. Actually, Firing Squad is still available in Utah. In case you didn't know.
Yeah, and I've seen people that have been for execution who have in the past 5-10 years who have requested Firing Squad. So
requested. Wow. I'd rather lethal injection if I had a choice. But, so Mike Winter says not a single person should be executed for inchoate crime. He says Vaughn Perry says until there's a foolproof way to ensure only guilty people are being executed, abolish the death penalty, and even then it would discriminate against people of color.
I agree with that.
Mike Wolf says in a perfect world, the justice system would be trustworthy enough and the death penalty could be administered fairly. Also in a perfect world, people who wouldn't be committing crimes. So also in a perfect world, people wouldn't be committing crimes that warranted the death penalty.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're not in a perfect world is basically what he's saying.
Far from it.
No.
Far from it.
Yes, they had penal colonies. That's from Jacqueline Robinson. And Reuven says that's how supervillains and henchmen get made.
Listen, I just watched The Dark Knight Rises again for like the 1,000th time the other night. And I mean, we all know that Bane should have been executed years ago. So come on.
Good old Bane. All right, guys, let's move on to our next hot topic. Great topic, Gianni. Great topic. All right. The next